Ooh, it's Wild Woman Rhapsody, Wild Woman Rhapsody. Number 45. I can't believe it, guys. I've gotten to 45 videos. It might be 46 because sometimes I lose count and I just have them in my head. But it's really exciting to be going live with you today. Today is National Equal Pay Day. And I have been contemplating this theme. What does it mean to have equal pay? I'm Brianna, by the way, and I work with women and men and others and myself to help us understand life and the beauty and the magic of all these things that are happening. I do this mostly through the mediums of coaching and mentorship, but I'm also just a human who loves to ask questions about the edge of life. And I live there. I live at my edge, and I live with my partner, Bearheart, who also lives at his edge, who's now watching. Hi, babe. It's good to see you. Hi, Sarah. It's good to see you tuning in. This is exciting. This is a very important topic for me, especially it being National Equal Pay Day. And I love going into this subject of women, sex, power, and money, and diving deep into the history and her story of what it has been to be a female body human in the past 3,000 to 5,000 years. Because there's a conversation that hasn't been had in our history books about what it means to be a female body human in this lifetime, given our recent history and her story. Hi, Lauren. It's good to see you. It's good to see you, Natalie. It's good to see people popping on here. So the first thing that I want to mention is at any point, if this video moves you, please share, because sharing is caring, number one. And also, this is a really important subject that doesn't really have anything to do with me as the vessel, has more to do with the message, that what it means to be a woman liberating herself. What does it mean to be coming into partnership in a more powerful way? What does it mean to be liberating ourselves from the chains of slavery truly? And what that means for us as women, and what that means for humanity, and how that relates to our money, sex, and power. So if at any point this moves you, please share. I'm not in the convincing business. I say this very clearly in all of my videos. I am not here to try to tell you what the truth is. I gave myself permission in these videos to completely open my oracle and just share with you my truth. This does not mean that I'm trying to convince you of anything. You don't have to believe anything that I say. You're more than welcome to take any information that serves you and leave the rest. Any comments that are here in the dialogue box, you're more than welcome to leave any sort of communication, but we will have no domination. If you need someone to believe what you believe, you will be deleted. So that's my level of trolling. Trolling the trolls is, if you have a point, you can make any point. We can talk about anything. Nothing is taboo. It's the way in which you communicate it. So as long as that's outlined. So I just want to start with an honest story. In my 20s, or I sometimes call them my succubus years, I had a lot of perpetual relationships where I was the one receiving financial support. And in its essence, there's nothing wrong with receiving financial support, whether you're a man or a woman. But when it becomes an exchange of I give you my energy in order to receive financial support, it is a very old paradigm, especially between men and women. And here on National Equal Pay Day, I find that this is a very important thing to talk about. Let's go back about 5,000 years. The two main areas of the world at the time, Asia and Europe, were looking at trade. And the way that they were trading at the time was trading through communication, trading through goods. It was the accumulation of power based on trade, based on exchange. And there was another philosophy rising around that time, about 3,000 to 5,000 years ago, which was the accumulation through force. So there was the accumulation through trade, and there was the accumulation through force. Now, the accumulation through force had some benefits. It had the benefits of, once you accumulated that thing that you got by force, it was yours. Accumulation through trade was more about exchange, and it was not as permanent. It was more goods and services rather than land or humans. Accumulation through force meant all of a sudden, if you were stronger than your neighbor, you could take their land and therefore the rest of their resources, the rest of their income, their family, whatever you wanted. And up until that time, there were small debacles, but there was really a dive about 3,000 to 5,000 years ago of the uprising of accumulation through force, which what some people call when the patriarchy came online. So the patriarchal model is essentially a war model of accumulation of lands and resources via force rather than through agreements. Someone says, I want that thing, and they go over and take it. It's a very kindergarten, maybe even preschool move. Like, he has the toy I want, I'm going to hit him to take it. Or she has the thing I want, I'm going to push her to take it. And that is accumulation via force. Now, in order to have the force, in order to have the military movement, in order to accumulate the things, one needs soldiers, right? Men soldiers, male soldiers most of the time. Now, there were defensive armies created up until this time to defend against other invaders, but there wasn't really a aggressive force created until this time. So around 3,000 to 5,000 years ago, when the aggressive force to accumulate lands was created, the first people to speak out, who was the first people to say no? Who doesn't want their men to go to war? Who doesn't want their little boys to go to war? Who doesn't want to lose their husbands to some king's idea of accumulating his next door neighbor's lands? The women. The women. And the laws became implemented that women were not allowed to speak out, that women were subjugated. That's when the law of marriage, literally selling a woman into her partnership and making her subjugated to her husband, became something well known throughout Europe, the Middle East, and Asia. Now, it had been happening before that time, but not in the same way. It became a more institutionalized, a more structural governmental system. Around that time, and then you go deeper into our human history, and we had the rise of the Catholic Church around 2,000 years, 1900 years ago, essentially, and that double implemented, because what the Constantine Council basically did was they wrote all the women out of the Bible. So the number one spreading religion at this time basically wrote all the women out of the Bible, all the women's voices. So all the books of the Bible are technically written by men, and the only descriptions of women in the Bible are those of servants to men. Even the queens were servants to their king, and they were seen as held high when they were servants to their men. Now, I as a woman have no problem serving my man when it's of my choice, but when it's of legal slavery, when it is that I have to, because I am literally a second-class citizen, that is a very vital life force that's being taken away from me, right? So when we talk about things like National Equal Pay Day or women rising up or really standing in their power, it's important for us women and men and others to understand that women have been in slavery for the past 3,000 to 5,000 years, that we were literally killed for speaking our truth. That women throughout history were literally burned at the stake for speaking their truth. So when you ladies, whether you're entrepreneurs or artists or promoting yourself in any way, have fear about that process, this isn't to collude your fear. This isn't to justify your fear. This is to help you understand that in your DNA, for the past 3,000 to 5,000 years, anyone like you as a woman speaking your truth could have been killed for that very truth. That's the shaking in your bones. It's not because you're not confident. It's not because you don't know enough. It's not because you're not equal to men. It's because you've been hunted for the past 3,000 to 5,000 years, and part of your work is allowing yourself to have the rage of what that means. Why do we take our husband's last name? Because we were their property. Because we lost our identity once we became owned by our man. I'm not an advocate against that. It's just important to know the energetics of the historical context that we're working with. Why can't the women catch up? How about you give us 3,000 years to rebuild our DNA from feeling like we're going to be tortured the moment that we bring forth our oracular truth? The moment we open our oracle, the moment I start shaking in sensation, the moment I'm feeling all of the emotions of every human being on the planet, and I'm choosing to channel this and open myself in a big, powerful way, the moment I am in the climactic pinnacle of my orgasmic oracling, I am captured and burned at the stake? That's a really incongruent message to women. And it's very important that we as women come forward and start understanding our history and our her story. That the her story is a big, beautiful, ample space where we as women get to reclaim. It's not about defeating anyone. Remember, that original patriarchal structure was on two fields. It was either acquisition or connection through trade or connection through conquering. And the connection through conquering is what we now call the patriarchal model. That's not good for men either. It's not good for men to go and die for a war that doesn't benefit them. It's not good for my father to lose his land to another human. It's not good for my brother to lose his soul being lost in the Middle East for someone else's war. This isn't about men versus women. This is about understanding that the end of slavery and the end of war is the crux of the entire thing, combined with economic power. If you really want to look at patriarchy, look at money and power. It's not about the men. We need our men, we need our others, we need our all identified peoples to understand that there is a system at play to keep the war going. That if your mission, if you're of the tribe of light, our mission in this lifetime is to end the war. The war that is all wars. No one should be dying for someone else's cause based on land or natural resources. No one. There's just no argument for that. There should be no human slaughtering for the acquisition of land or natural resources. We have evolved past this point. Homo sapiens gets to wake up. Right? There was only ever one war, and it was the war of acquisition. And when we end that war, when we no longer need to acquire the next thing by putting someone else's down, when there no longer has to be a winner and a loser, that's when the patriarchy ends. That's how we end the patriarchy. We end the war with self, we end the war with all selves, and we end the war with the world itself. That is how patriarchy ends. It starts with the self. It starts with me stopping the fight within myself, me understanding the slavery that as a woman I've been in for the past 3,000 to 5,000 years, that as a woman from Western Europe, I was hunted. My peoples were hunted as witches. My peoples were hunted as heathens. My peoples were hunted as Celts by the Roman, by the Sumerian, by the Mongolian tribes for thousands of years. And to understand that we all have different stories of slavery and acquisition and war within our DNA, and that it's vital. It's vital for us to end that war within ourselves, to forgive all that needs to be forgiven. I get to forgive all those in the past of my family lineages who've put in fractures upon my DNA. Forgiving. Once the energy becomes forgiving, I no longer have to try to forget, right? When it's no longer forgetting, I can actually use it forgiving. If I'm still trying to forget something, I'm going to still be trying to acquire. That goes back into the model of war, goes back into the model of slavery. When it's forgiving, I'm actually working on releasing the charge that I have around the story, understanding it in a passionate way so that I can deliver it to you, but in a way that has no blame on men, on Mongolians, on whomever it is that took over my lands, that made me a cultural refugee, that brought me to the United States of America. I'm a very small percentage of Native American, of Choctaw heritage. And I cannot claim that as anything that I have with my lineage here because I'm not connected to that culturally. I've been displaced from that culturally too. Who here is not a cultural refugee of some place in the world? We've all been displaced by the war. Wake up, my brothers and sisters. You are a cultural refugee. So on this day of National Equal Pay Day, I am asking you as women and men, unequal pay is because of the war machine, is because of the paradigm of the war that's still being fought. National Equal Pay Day should be that my star daughter, my stepdaughter, does not need to raise money in order to get books for her school, but that someday our military would have to hold a fundraiser in order to be able to drop a bomb somewhere. That's the vision that I have for my planet, is the ending of the war. Capital T, capital W. And that begins by ending the war with ourselves and understanding that that monster of acquisition, the idea that I have to have, the idea that I must have the thing, that if they have, I need to have, that is the internal war. That is the paradigm that was set in place specifically by suppressing the women's voices so that they couldn't resist their brothers and their husbands and their sons being taken away from them in order to create the paradigm of war. Patriarchy is the paradigm of war, and it does not serve men or women. It does not serve others. It does not serve anyone. The rising of the feminine, as it's been called, is not something I subscribe to. I subscribe to the end of slavery and the end of war for all beings, for all genders, across all ages, across all races, across all time and place. We get to end this war. And so what, right? What's the anecdote? How do we navigate this? This is a big question that my partner Bearheart and I are living in, and what it means to reclaim the wild, reclaim the indigenous, reclaim the barefoot on the earth, reclaim those who were so connected to their own source that they didn't need the acquisition of shit in order to validate their experience. Those are my ancestors. The deeply connected, deeply rooted, deeply breathing individuals who have such a deep connection to nature and source that whatever they have or don't have does not define them. We can enjoy luxury, but that doesn't define me. We can enjoy opulence, but that doesn't define me. I can enjoy this beautiful forest, but that doesn't define me, right? Getting out of the model that I have to have things in order to define me, that is a paradigm of patriarchy, of the war machine. That you need to have more things in order to be valuable. The acquisition of things gives you value. And this is how claiming my inner wild woman, and so much of this wild woman rhapsody has been this process of like claiming the one who gets into those banshee states of rage, right? Why have they tried to calm the women down? Don't be so angry, ladies. Because our rage is a response to injustice. We don't want our brothers and our sisters and our children going to war. There's a rage that comes up in that. So if we suppress the women's rage, if we tell them that they're crazy and make it illegal for them to speak their minds, we can keep our war machine going. The danger with a woman not being connected to her wild woman is that she doesn't have a proper response to injustice. She allows herself to be raped. She allows herself to be taken advantage of. She allows herself to be trampled over. She allows herself to exchange her body for resources, for attention, for validation. Don't I know it? This is me speaking to me here. And ladies, you can chime in too. What is it like? What is it like to not be in your wild woman? What is it like to not fully claim the justice that powers your rage? It is important for us as women and us as men to be deeply connected to the anger and the rage that's connected to the justice of ending the war. If your objective isn't to end the war, there's deep inner work to be done. That's it. This isn't Republican. This isn't Democrat. This isn't up. This isn't down. If your objective in this lifetime is not to end the war, you have a lot of inner work to do. The war within yourself, any wars you have with your family, whether it's family that's living or in past lineages, or anyone here on this planet, anyone that you think is an enemy, whether it's Trump or white people or rich people or poor people or African people or those people or whatever people you think that you have a chip on your shoulder with, that owe you an explanation, that owe you an apology. The trick, the truth, the keyhole here is seek first to understand and then be understood. The release of all war begins with the release with war within self. There's only ever one war, and it's the war with self. And all external wars began as a deep war with self. I don't know who was originally hurt, what king was originally hurt so deeply, what person was hurt originally so deeply that they had to conscript my brothers and my fathers in order to fight for them, in order to bloody themselves on a battlefield for them. That lack of evolution in our conscious brain and in our hearts is no longer in alignment. I couldn't even find the word, is no longer resonant with what it means to be a human at this time. We no longer resonate with the frequency of war. And that's why so many of us are waking up our sensitivities. That's why so many empaths are coming online. That's why so many healers are waking up. That's why so many people are stepping forward to help this awakening, because they're starting to realize that we don't have to suffer. Once someone has an awakening of like, oh wait, this internal war is a choice. Well, if the internal war is a choice, is it possible that all external wars are also a choice? Yes, all internal and external wars are a choice. All of them. Are you a part of the generation that is going to end the war on this planet? Claiming your inner wild one, whether it's inner wild woman, man, or other, however you want to call it, is about taking radical responsibility for your life. It's about being a queen, a king, a true regal, which means everything in my field I create, including the war with myself, the external war on the planet. I have a responsibility to be one of the voices that speaks about the war on the planet, that speaks about child slavery. Do you know the #1 economic exchange on the planet right now is female flesh? I checked this stat. Under the age of 25, sold for sex and domestic housework together. Sold for sex and domestic housework. The #1 economic exchange on our planet right now, the #1 business on the planet right now is women in slavery. Happy National Equal Pay Day. And I say this to wake up the wild woman, the wild man in you. If that doesn't piss you off and allow your rage to flow through you in a beautiful, powerful way, it is so sad, but it's powerful. And to feel that and say, what am I here to do? To end the war with myself, to end the war between other selves, and end the war on the planet herself, itself. What are you here to contribute? What are you here to give? I'm here to give my voice. My voice is a prayer. My voice is an oracle. My voice is my gift. My voice is my sacred prayer to the concept that we in this lifetime can cease the war. We can cease the war. And it is about wakening up. Wakening up? I don't know if that's a verb. It is now. It's about awakening the inner wild one, the one who runs free, the one who lives unabashedly, the one that lives in the truth, the one that is not afraid to get dirty, the one that isn't afraid to speak forward, the reality that lives within your heart. That's how we end the war, is we wake up. We wake up the wild one. It's not about waking up the perfect spiritualist who can meditate and stand on their fucking head. If you can stand on your fucking head, that's great. I can stand on my fucking head too. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just the external ideas of spirituality in order to save the planet are not going to work. Those are other prescriptions. Those are other band-aids for the actual issue. The actual issue is that slavery is still happening on our planet, and us in privileged countries being quiet about it and being the #1 consuming country of slavery on the planet. Yes, the United States is the #1 consuming country of slavery on the planet. Being that, we get to utilize our privilege and our voice to name it. We first name it. I don't know what the answer is. I don't know if we need to have a convergence of giant peace to end slavery and war. I don't know what the answer is. I do know that being quiet about it doesn't help. I do know that speaking in a small, soft voice hasn't been the answer to the question for the past 5,000 years, ladies. I want to hear you. I want to hear your voice. I want to hear your wild woman. I want to hear you come forward and say, you know what? I'm done with slavery. I'm done being a woman who doesn't get that 20 cents to make it to the man's dollar. I'm done being the woman who is a princess and expects the men around me to take care of me. Now, it doesn't mean that I don't love being taken care of by my man. I get to be in choice with that. I ask him to take care of me, but he doesn't have to financially support me. He doesn't have to. I can do that for myself. I've learned how to do that for myself. Now, do I believe that the financial freedom of women is a key part of ending slavery? Yes, I do. Yes, I do. I do believe that being financially free is an incredibly important part for every woman. Is it required? No. I believe that if there is a conscious agreement between a couple, a partnership, whether it's man, woman, 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 other, any kind of partnership, if there's an agreement that makes sense and works for both of you, then you get to do that. But to be mindful that the past 5,000 years, women have been subjected to men in that financial relationship where they haven't been able to have any power in the decision making. So just be very mindful that if you're a woman receiving financial support from your man solely, then there's going to be an activation of an old paradigm that you get to work through. It's not bad. You get to work through that. It's just good to be conscious of it. Wild Woman Rhapsody number 45. Please share if this moves you. It was good to see you live. It's good to see you, Monica and Jeannie and Rubia. So wonderful to see all of you. I love you. Have a beautiful National Equal Pay Day. Lots of love, lots of light. Happy wildness to you all. Blessings.